Welcome to Katy Calls BS, the podcast where we cut through the noise in course creation, digital products, and business strategy. I'm Katy Miller, bringing you blunt advice, real action steps, and the occasional F-bomb because building a business is hard and the BS isn't helping. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of Katy Calls BS. We've talked a lot about pricing, memberships, and creating your learning experience lately. In almost every episode, I mention the things you repeat in your everyday work. I see my clients getting stuck with where to start with digital products. How do we take what you do every single day with your clients and turn it into a digital product? Your first simple digital product is usually not a course or big, huge idea that you need to go searching for. It's in your onboarding. Those same explanations you're giving to every single client. When I say things like you're already teaching it, I promise you are. When you hear it's in the things that you're already repeating and think, okay, great, but what am I going to do with that? What am I supposed to make out of that? That's what we're going to talk about today. I mean, we're really breaking it down, and I'm actually going to tell you what to do with it. I'm not just going to talk about it. I want you to think about your last few clients. Before they ever got results with you, what happened? What was the process? I'm guessing you probably explained how you work, like how you were going to work together. You walked them through the process. You answered the same questions that you always answer. You corrected the same misunderstandings that most clients have. You set some expectations. You gave them a starting point, probably. And you've done that over and over again. The same call, the same conversation, the same teaching for every client. You do it all the time. You probably do it without thinking about it. It's not just part of your process. That right there is the product that is waiting to exist. Let's turn that into a product you can use for clients, but also as a standalone digital product. This works across all industries. For those of you who don't do one-on-one coaching, stick around, because I promise you're going to get something out of this too. A typical onboarding call for a service provider looks something like this. You hop on a call, you work through what you're going to do together, what the client can expect, what they need to do, common mistakes to avoid throughout the process of working together. You might set some expectations and how to get the best results out of working together. The client's going to ask some questions like, do I need to do this before we start? What happens if I don't have this ready? How involved do I need to be? You answer their questions clearly, confidently, same things you've asked and answered a million times. You don't really think about it anymore. I'm sure that your process has evolved, just like your business has evolved. You might have this really nailed down at this point. You might even have a pre-call worksheet to help. I had this when I did power hours. I would send out pre-call questions to help focus our time together because I didn't want to waste any of that hour answering BS questions. You might have your process mapped out so well that this part has evolved where you're not spending time wasting time. But we do this for every client. I can almost guarantee that all of us service providers enjoy the meaty part of the work the most and not the onboarding part. We don't really like the systems part. We like the part of the work which is the reason that we started a business. The problem that most service providers have is that every time you do an onboarding process live, you're spending more of your time. You're repeating yourself. You depend on your presence and your energy. You create an inconsistency because no two calls are exactly the same. Your knowledge that you're sharing in every single one of those onboarding calls disappears when the call ends. That's the problem. The shift we want to make is instead of asking, how do I create a digital product out of this onboarding call? We want to ask, what am I already repeating that doesn't need to be live? Because that's where you start. The first step is to identify what's being repeated. This is the first thing I do with my clients. We look for the patterns, not the ideas, but the patterns, things like the same onboarding explanation, the same prep instructions, the same here's how this works conversation, the same early stage corrections, the same FAQs. If you've said it more than 3 to 5 times, which you may not even know that you're doing it at this point, it's not random. It's part of your system. It's the same way we pull out the pre-call questions, the checklist, fill this out before we start type of things. The second step is to pull out those core pieces. You break down the onboarding call. This might also be your discovery call. When you operate a business long enough, you get really good at weeding out the right fit clients and the wrong fit clients. It's how our contracts have evolved from something that we thought was really good at the beginning to having the clauses that weed out the kind of shady clients. You know what I'm talking about. You can get these onboarding calls narrowed down to what you need from your client and what you notice a client needs from you to feel good about the entire experience of working with you. There's not a lot of fluff in this call, especially if you've been doing it for long enough. Now, what you're actually doing in this is something like the orientation, like how this whole process is going to look. You have your expectations, like what actually matters, the process, here's what happens next, here's how this whole thing is going to look, the preparation, what they need to do, what they're going to get from you, some common mistakes. None of this has to be a call. All of this is structure. You may have even pulled some of this out so that it's not a call anymore, which is great. Now, when we turn this into a resource, it's not a full course. This is not like, please take my onboarding course. No client is ever going to do that. We have to keep this pretty simple. This can be a recorded walkthrough, a short training, a little structured guide, a checklist, plus a video. Like, hey, here's what the expectations of working with me are going to look like. Because we don't need to spend time doing this BS stuff when we can jump right into the actual good stuff of working together. Send it to your client. It works out well for everyone because some of these topics get kind of awkward for people. I personally hated doing these in person. It felt like a huge waste of time for me and my client to do an onboarding call when, frankly, it could have been an email. This is where most people mess it up. They build something. They're like, okay, great, I got this. I'm going to build this onboarding thing, and they never actually use it. They pull out their onboarding process, they build something, and they don't plug it into their business. Before the onboarding call, you have to send the thing. You have to say, watch this before we meet. Now your call is going to change. You're not explaining the basics anymore. You're answering better questions. Your clients are coming in prepared. Your time becomes more valuable. Once that piece exists, you're going to notice what shifts. You're going to notice more things that you repeat, more areas that could be documented, more places where you can replace yourself with a digital product. And that one onboarding resource becomes part of your client experience, part of a future digital product, part of a larger learning system. That's how it builds. I'm going to give you some examples of what this is going to look like so we can put it into practice, because I want to be clear that this isn't your basic, here's my onboarding practice of how we work together, and here's the expectations of what our process is going to be. And that's it. No, I want to give you some examples of what this could be for a few different industries to paint the whole entire picture. For a brand photographer, instead of explaining prep on every call, like what to wear, how to prepare, how to show up on camera, and going through an hour-long call, you create a client prep training, a simple guide or a short video explaining the guide with extra tips on it. Simple, straightforward, gives your client everything they need, and now you're not doing this hour-long call with them. For a website designer, instead of repeating what content is needed, how timelines are going to work, what delays a project, you build a client onboarding module. Very simple. The client gets their questions answered, and then you're not sitting there saying the same thing to every client on your first call with them. You get to dive into the work. It also frees up your schedule to do the work. A social media manager, instead of explaining content expectations, collaboration, strategy basics, you create a short strategy foundation training, brief, gets it out of the way. Then on the first call with the client, you get right into the content planning. For a coach, instead of re-explaining how coaching works, what results require, how your client needs to show up, you build a client readiness resource and send pre-call questions. Then your first call, you can dive right into the coaching part and get to work. For product-based businesses, understanding the ordering process, portion calculator, budget breakdowns, event planning timelines, design walkthroughs, short videos. This allows for more efficient ordering for your clients, better customers. We all want that. Content that builds authority and fewer repetitive conversations. When you do this part right, your onboarding is going to get faster. Your clients are going to get better results. Your time frees up. Your expertise becomes reusable. And over time, you're not just saving time, you're building assets. Those assets are going to become your resources, and those become your digital products. This applies to almost any business. That resource that we just created from our onboarding, that's not just a time saver for you that you can plug in to your client work. That's the beginning of your digital product resources. But here's where most people stop a little too early. They create it, they use it with their clients, and that's it. They don't take the next step. What I see is we all have these type of products sitting in our Canva, sitting in our Google Drive, sitting wherever we're holding all of these digital products that we've created for our clients or created for our business. But how do we make it go beyond that? Once it's working inside of our process, you start to see something that it doesn't just help our clients, it doesn't just help that one product, it helps anyone at that stage. We want it to move from an internal resource to an external product. Here's what that evolution is going to look like. The first step is an internal use, what you already built, what you're already using it for, and what you might have all these digital products inside your business or all these resources inside your business already doing. You send something before onboarding. It reduces the repetition for you, and it improves your client readiness. This is where we have proof that it works. The second stage is a standalone resource. Now we're going to take that same material and package it a little bit differently. Instead of watch this before our call or use this before our call, it becomes how to prepare for X without wasting time or money. Same content, different positioning. Now it can be sold in a different way or sold at all. Because before, when you're using it just internally with your clients, now we're using the same thing that you've already created. We're just repackaging it and selling it. The third stage is an entry-level digital product. Now you add a little more structure. We organize it into steps. We add a worksheet or a checklist. We clarify the outcome. Now it's not just helpful, it's a complete product. This becomes a paid guide, a low-ticket product, a starting point for your audience. Now the fourth stage, it's part of a larger learning system that you can build on. Now that one resource that we started with for our clients becomes a building block. It can plug into a mini course, a bundle, a learning suite, a larger program. Nothing that you have created gets wasted. It gets reused and repositioned. Now let's talk about where pricing comes in, because we talked about this last week. This is where people get stuck the most. How do I price this thing? Because this used to be part of your service. Now it's separate. To review from last week's episode, you're not pricing the time it took you to create it. You're pricing the problem it solves, the time it saves, the mistakes it prevents, the clarity it gives. Here's a simple pricing framework. Use this as a guide, okay? If it saves time or answers basic questions, it's going to be between $17 and $47. Some examples would be a client prep guide. What to do before you hire a blank. Like what to do before you hire a brand photographer. If it improves results or prevents mistakes. $47 to $147 roughly. Examples of this would be how to prepare for your brand shoot so you don't waste $2,000. This is going to be a little meatier. And then if it replaces the early stage of support or coaching, it's going to be $147 to $297 about. An example of this would be a structured onboarding or readiness training that used to happen live. The thing to remember here is inside your service, this knowledge that you're sharing now was included, it was expected, it was part of your service. Outside of your service, it becomes accessible, specific, and outcome driven. You're not charging for access to you. You're charging for clarity without needing you. That's the whole point of digital products that live inside your digital product ecosystem. It's your expertise without needing you. This works because this product is not random. It is not an idea that you pulled out of nowhere. It's already been tested, proven, refined, and based on real client behavior. You already know where people get stuck, what they misunderstood, what they already need to hear. That's why this type of product sells better than the random product you pulled out of nowhere. It's built from reality. When you start doing this consistently, using products and building products like this, you'll notice things shift. You're no longer asking, what should I create? I don't know what digital product to make. You're asking, what am I already doing that can become an asset? That's how you build a digital product suite that actually works. It's not from ideas, but it's from patterns. That onboarding call that you've been repeating, it's not just part of your process. It's your first product. That's what I've been telling you guys. You just haven't been treating it like one, which is why I wanted to do an episode like this so that I could map out how you pull out these things from your onboarding calls or from your client process. This is how you do it. This is exactly what we look at inside the digital product infrastructure audit, because most business owners can't see their own patterns. We're too locked into them. We've been doing it for too long. We think, I don't have a product idea. Or maybe you have a million and you can't narrow it down. But what you do have is repeated knowledge, unstructured teaching, and missed opportunities. You have so much already inside your business. What the audit does is pull all of that out. We look at what you're repeating, what should become resources, what can come off your calendar, because you might be having calls you don't need to have, and what we can turn into products later. I want to take what you're already using, and how can that all be repurposed? The audit gives you a starting point that actually makes sense. If you feel stuck on where to start with digital products, look at your client work. That's where you're repeating things the most. The fastest way to build your first digital product, or if you're wondering where to start at all because you have a million ideas, is to stop repeating something you've already explained 10 times this month. You don't need a new idea. You need to capture the one you're already using. I promise you have a million ideas within your business already. They're just sitting there waiting to be used. And if you need help, I'm here to help you. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you next time. If this episode hit home, your next step isn't to build anything. It's to audit what you already have. I offer a paid infrastructure audit where I review your current offers, delivery load, and where your business is relying too heavily on you. You'll get a clear decision doc and a Loom walkthrough outlining what actually makes sense next. The link is in the show notes.